introducing myself and telling you guys a little bit about my experience before we jump into what Western entrepreneurship is all about. So I'm a business advisor with Propel and Western Entrepreneurship. I actually started back at the beginning of March, and I was in the office for literally 6 business days before we were all moved to a virtual manner and sent home. So it was a bit of an interesting start to a new job. But it was made a little bit easier because I did know a few of the people at Propel already from my previous experience with having my own business. So prior to starting in this role, I was actually scaling a food business full-time for about 5 years. My business had started as a tiny little health food bakery at the Western Fair Farmers Market. To scale to a national level, supplying about 300 retailers coast to coast. So it was a really cool journey and a really cool adventure, and I think that it really has helped inform a lot of the meetings that I have now, because I actually have that kind of boots on the ground experience of building a business. And so I eventually realized that the reasons I had started my food business, a love of food, a love of creating delicious, healthy food and sharing that with other people and seeing their response to my creations, I had really moved away from that. So I had gotten into more of a supply chain company. So I was selling my product to distributors, they were selling it to grocery stores, who was selling it to the end user customer, and I really just did not have that one-on-one interaction with the customers anymore. So I made the decision to pivot out of the food space and into something that I was truly passionate about, which is helping entrepreneurs solve their entrepreneurial puzzles and figure out where all those puzzle pieces fit and come together in a way that makes for a successful business. And so what I do at Propel is I take one-on-one advisory meetings. So anyone who needs a little bit of coaching or guidance or advice on their business, I'm here to help. So we deal with anyone who is, all the way from pre-ideation stage, where maybe they have an interest in entrepreneurship, but not necessarily even having a business idea yet. But they just want to learn a little bit more about what entrepreneurship is, and they think that they could have a really cool idea in the future. We work with people at the ideation stage where they're starting to brainstorm some ideas, and they might be coming to the table with a specific idea, but they're not really sure what the next steps look like. And so we're there to help with the next steps. And then we also help people in the growing and scaling phase as well. So people who have already established businesses who just need a little bit of advice or guidance or need some questions answered. And so typically we're helping people within the Western communities. So we advise Western students, alumni, staff, and faculty. And my experience has allowed me to have a little bit of expertise in the food industry, obviously. But I also do have areas of expertise in marketing, especially social media marketing. In building successful business-to-business sales strategies as well. Obviously, I was able to supply 300 retailers across all of Canada, and I did that through really strategic sales strategies. And then also I have some expertise in building a brand that actually results in sales. So I didn't want to just have a product or an energy bar. I wanted to have a brand that people felt that they could get behind. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Western entrepreneurship and what we do, and then I'll hand it over to Josh, and he can give a little bit of an introduction about himself as well. So if you guys don't know about Western entrepreneurship yet, what we do is we provide programming, resources, events, workshops, guidance, advice, kind of the whole range of programming for people within the Western community. So typically, again, that's students, alumni, faculty, and staff. But I do know that a lot of fan-child grads also have gone to Western at some point, or have graduated from Western or taken some courses or have some sort of affiliation. So I will tell you guys about some of the programming that is open to people that have that Western affiliation. So we have a co-working space. In non-COVID times, we actually do have the ability to come in and sit down with us in person, one-on-one, to talk about your business. And then other people do just love to drop in and hang out and interact and talk with other entrepreneurs and just gain some of their expertise and experience, just literally through interacting with them in a very natural setting. We have a couple of pitch competitions. So we do have Seed Your Startup, which is in conjunction with Fanshawe. And so that is open to all Fanshawe and Western students, and you're pitching for about $3,000 to use to seed your business. We also have our Dragon's Tank pitch competition, which does not have any financial component to it, but we do offer some prizes, and that is more so just to practice your pitch. So if you ever intend on pitching in front of investors, it's an opportunity to come in and just practice going through your pitch and in front of actual judges. We have an accelerator program, which is more of that growth and scale piece. So it's a 12-week program. It is full-time, and it's open to Western students and alumni that are at that MVP stage. So once you have your minimum viable product and you're either generating some revenue or you are ready to rock and you're ready to start generating some revenue, that programming within that program is more geared towards growth and sales, marketing, branding, all of the things that are going to get your business from where it is now to where you want it to be. We do also have a number of events that we run throughout the course of the school year. So we have an event that's called Expert Hours, which is actually where Josh and I met. So Expert Hours is an opportunity for you to talk one-on-one with industry experts. So even though Josh and I are fantastic with regards to advising on general entrepreneurship terms, we don't necessarily have all of the really specific industry knowledge for every single industry out there. Like if you have a food business, we are definitely your people. But if you have a business that's in a different industry, we might be referring you to other experts as well to help kind of inform that knowledge base. And so Expert Hours is meant to do just that. We have a group of experts from different industries come in. You can book one-on-one meetings with them and talk directly with them about your specific industry. We also have lawyers and accountants and people like that come in to speak as well, because I know that most entrepreneurs do have questions around those topics when they're starting out. We typically have a holiday market, which I don't think we're going to be having this year, unfortunately, but it is an opportunity for people within our community to actually set up a booth and sell their product during the month of, there's a day in the month of December where we have that available. And then we have Hack Western, which is a hackathon as well. So the good news is that even though most of our programming is open to just Western student, staff, faculty, and alumni, this year with COVID and everything going virtual, we have made the bulk of our programming is available to the general population. So we have weekly webinars. We had started them when COVID started, and I believe we did them for about 16 weeks or so. And then we stopped for the month of August, and we're going to be starting back up in September. So all of our previous webinars are available online as recorded content. And in September, when we do start them back up, they will be open to the general population. So you can absolutely join whatever webinars make sense for you. So those webinars also, I should mention, it's a huge range of topics. So everything from digital marketing all the way through to intellectual property. So essentially, like any questions that you might have, you might be able to get answered in these webinars. And there is an opportunity at the end of each webinar for you to ask your questions as well. So there is a little bit of that interactive component there as well. We also have a podcast series that's available online. And as we continue to plan out our events for the course of the school year, we are trying to make everything as accessible as possible because, again, with it being in a virtual format, there's no reason not to. And so we are going to be having the bulk of our event programming accessible to the general population. So if you want to find out about any of those events, webinars, podcasts, anything like that, there are two spots that you should be looking. So the first is our Facebook page. So it's just facebook.com/WesternU, the letter U, Propel. And the other spot is on the Ivy website. So it's ivy.uwo.ca/entrepreneurship. So those would be the best two spots to look for those things, but definitely keep your eyes on the webinars. We've got some really awesome speakers coming in for these webinars, and I think it's going to be some really good content. So I know that was a lot. I tend to be very talkative, so I'm going to hand it over to Josh now and stop talking. So Josh, go ahead.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, that was really good and, super detailed. If you guys have any questions too, I just want to throw that out there that, Nicole and I are here for you as well. If you want to either connect through Leap or we can throw our emails maybe out at the end in the chat. You can send us a message. So myself, I have a food business as well. And Nicole and I met through that. She mentioned the expert hours. I came into Propel kind of as an undergrad student, and I was looking, how do I kind of grow my food business? And then I was matched with Nicole during one of those expert hours. And that's actually how we met. Since then, I actually took my business into the summer incubator and the Western Accelerator. So I worked on it full time for about a year outside of my degree. And when I was in school, I studied integrated engineering and business, and then I did a certificate in entrepreneurship as well. So with that degree, actually a lot of my expertise comes in at having a bit of design innovation and product development expertise. And then on the business side, I really wanted to start using those skills and combine that with my passion for food. And I've always, pretty much my whole life, loved cooking. So I was kind of looking a bit around. I had seen the meal kit industry was something that interested me. And then I kind of took that concept and pulled it into energy bars and created a business called Maker Bars. And it's the first energy bar meal kit. And we ship them kind of directly from our website to consumers' doors. From there, we went into the Propel Summer Incubator. I learned lots about how does the food industry work. And I met Nicole through that process, which was awesome. And she's been a great mentor as starting my business. And then in the fall, I actually joined another accelerator program called the League of Innovators. That was all virtual. So I was pretty used to this Zoom life thing before COVID happened. And then I actually joined in with the Small Business Center in their food scale-up program as well. In that time period, we launched a new product that was more of like an on-the-go solution. And those were called our Go Energy Bites. And so with that was really kind of the pivot that turned the company a bit more on fire. And we were up to about 20, 30 retailers by the end of the year. Then I went into the Western Accelerator in their winter cohort of 2020, actually, and continued to grow the business. And unfortunately, COVID kind of happened halfway through that. And I was looking, to have some way where I could start giving back to entrepreneurs as well. Because we're kind of in a phase right now with my business where we're going through a bit of R&D, and we're taking a bit of a step backwards. And then especially with COVID, it's not really the greatest time to scale an on-the-go solution. So our kind of product though, like we have two main components in the business that we focus on, which is called ethically sourced ingredients and sustainably packaged products. So we use a lot of fair trade ingredients in the product and local ingredients. And then as well, on the R&D side, we've been working really hard to kind of challenge the status quo in the industry and use compostable packaging. So we're going through this process right now, really checking, the shelf life. Does it work through machinery? Like, the whole kind of, it's a bit of an iterative design thinking process. And that's a lot of kind of my skill set and background is really a lot of prototyping. How can I check if this is going to work with $100? How can I check now that I've validated it works, with $1,000? And it's a bit of like a bootstrapping prototyping technique. So if you're ever interested in kind of talking around like those regards, similar to Nicole, I've been working really hard on building a brand that consumers back, and I think in and around London, people are really starting to resonate with it, which is really cool. And going further, if you're looking for any kind of general business advice and strategy, and thinking big picture, or how you want to really wrap your business around, is it going to be investors or is it going to be a local small business? I'm really happy to kind of discuss what do each of those two types of things look like in general business strategy. So that's a bit about me. If anyone ever wants to also talk about food, that is something I could talk about for hours. So just let me know. Are we jumping to questions now, or yeah, okay.
Yeah, you guys have about 12 minutes. So if there's questions or other things you want to share, or advice you'd like to give, please leave us with your contact information. But yeah, you still have some time.
Okay, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Aaron?
How do you guys reach your customers? Like, is it word of mouth or Google Ads or?
I use a lot. Well, this has been definitely one of the main challenges, especially running a food business during COVID-19, was we had a lot of intention on running like demos and samplings, tons of markets and pop-ups. And I was just kind of like, oh, well, we can't really sample food while there's a pandemic going on. So we've actually been using like creative strategies right now and offering samples and free filling orders to retailers so that they can, especially new vendors. So instead of us setting up a booth, we give them samples and a nice memo card, and they can kind of create that good brand experience with through our vendor to the retailer. Otherwise, I have used Facebook ads as a common one, Google ads sometimes, but haven't really used a lot of ad spend. And I would say for sure a lot of word of mouth marketing has been very important. And then social media. So Instagram is our main social media that I focus on. And that's definitely led to a lot of growth in the business.
Yeah, I had a bit of an easier time with mine because I was growing my business when we weren't in a pandemic. And so for me, like my customers were the retailers, right? And so I was getting retailers through literally just boots on the ground sales. So what I would do is call up a bunch of retailers in one region and say, you know what, I would really love to come out and provide you with some samples of my product and talk to you for a quick 5 minutes, not take up too much of your time. And then I would go out physically in person, drop off those samples, chat with them very quickly, give them about a week to try it. And then I would call to follow up and say, what did you think? Did you like them? Would you like to bring them into your store? And so that was my sales strategy for a really long time until I moved into kind of the world of distributors. And then they were sort of handling that piece on behalf of me. So that was how I got a lot of my B2B sales. And then, yeah, as Josh mentioned, like demoing, sampling as much as possible, as often as possible. I know it's not possible right now, but we also heavily used Instagram as well for outreach.
Thanks, guys. Any other questions for Josh and Nicole? They have a lot of experience outside of food. I know not all of you are in food. So questions about accessing their services or their own businesses, anything like that? Aaron, did you have another question?
Yeah. So if you could go back in time and you would tell yourself something, what advice would you give yourself?
Josh, do you want to go first, or?
You can go first. I'm thinking about it still.
Honestly, my best piece of advice would be to like ask yourself why you're doing this. Like, what is it that you want to get out of this experience? What do you want for your life? why are you doing this? Because for me, I had a very vivid vision of what I wanted when I first started my business, right? Like I wanted this little health food bakery and a farmer's market. I wanted to, spend one day a week selling my products and having coffee and chats with some of my awesome customers, and spending the rest of the week, walking my dogs and tending to my veggie garden. Like that was the life I wanted. And throughout the course of trying to scale my business and make it successful, I ended up with a much different company than that. And so that was the biggest reason I would say that I ended up pivoting out of it, because I realized like this isn't what my vision was from the beginning. I had really moved away from that. So I think it's really important to ask yourself early and often, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, Nicole. Another thing that I would add is, this is kind of the way that I've been trained in entrepreneurship, but you want to think about kind of, uh, I guess it's to sort of further on like, why am I doing this? But, what is sort of the problem that you're solving, or, what's really like resonating with you and what's resonating with your customers? And I think putting those two things together, that, what is that problem, and really defining that. And the best way to be defining that is to really define and interview and understand your customers. So you kind of have to get away from your desk a little bit, and go out there, like Nicole is talking about, going out and, you're knocking on doors of retailers and you're understanding what are they looking for, or what are their consumers looking for, because that problem of, her energy bar didn't exist on the market. And those sorts of things. Like, so for instance, in any example of entrepreneurship, you really need to kind of get away from the desk and understand the consumer, but, further than that, what is the problem that you're targeting? And I think that's, the number one lesson learned in entrepreneurship, is to make sure you can always come back to that, so that you can really pitch and make it compelling to everyone that you meet along the way.
How do you price your items?
Is this a general pricing question, or is this for food product specific?
It's a general pricing question. I'm just curious how people price their product.
I usually tell people there's kind of two ways. So there's often, industry prices that, especially for Nicole and I, when you go into something like food product, there's lots of competition. So you can kind of really understand what is the willingness to pay of a consumer. Say you're starting a tech business, you can find kind of similar people in your industry vertical, and look at, are they charging $7 a month? And you can do that kind of comparative pricing analysis. When you do that, you have to be careful not to undersell yourself. I think that's always a big mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make, is they undercharge, and it's a lot easier to charge higher than offer discounts, or, offer an introductory pricing when you just start, just to get those first couple of customers. And then there's this whole other world of pricing, where if you're starting something that I kind of call like blue ocean, and you're in a whole new ocean, and it's totally like, a perfect example is like Netflix. There was nobody doing streaming services and stuff, so they were like, I don't know what to price this at, and there's no comparatives anymore. That becomes really very challenging, and, the goal there is to just really, again, understand the consumer and trying to ask them what are they willing to pay. And then once you start charging them, you have to monitor how much really drop off in that process, because maybe you've charged too much and it's caused a really high drop off of your user base. But most of the time, you're not in that blue ocean space, and you can find something similar to compare your pricing to. Do you want to add anything, Nicole, to that?
Yeah, I would just add that you should have a really good understanding of how much it costs you to produce like if you're a product-based business, you need to know how much it costs you to produce your product, so that you can charge accordingly, so that you can actually make money, right? So if you have a product and you're selling it and you're not able to turn a profit on it, like that's more of a hobby than a business, right? So you need to make sure that you're selling your product for enough money that you can actually profit on it. And then 100% want to back up what Josh said about do not undervalue yourself. If you have a product that is a higher quality than your competitor, you should be selling it for more not less, not the same. It should be more. So I think that Josh was absolutely correct in saying that most startup entrepreneurs undervalue what they have to offer. And you know, I don't know any of you yet. I hope to know some of you in the future, but I can pretty much guarantee that you all have something incredible to offer to the world, and you need to price it accordingly.
And, you know, just to say too, the pricing is a very fluffy topic. And it's very subjective. It's all really, you know, psychological to what the consumer is willing to pay. And I love telling, there's actually a podcast, I think, on Spotify somewhere talking about Bruce Lee trying to offer coaching lessons. And he originally, because he's so famous in Hollywood for his martial arts, he was actually going to go teach other actors martial arts. And he was trying to charge people around like $250 an hour. And they didn't want to get taught even by the famous Bruce Lee because they thought that price didn't make sense to his talents. So he ended up needing to start charging people in the thousands of dollars per hour for these Hollywood actors to feel confident that they were, you know, getting trained properly. So that's what I mean by, you know, pricing is very subjective, and definitely don't undersell yourself, but, you know, bring it back to listening to the consumer, like even Bruce Lee did there, to kind of figure out what do people want to pay to feel that they got the most value out of this.
Thank you.
Paul and Josh. So we have about 1 more minute. So how can our crew get in touch with you if they'd like to continue this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do is I'll drop my email in the chat. So it's just Nicole, or sorry, it's nhaney@uwo.ca. So you can absolutely email me if you have any like quick questions or anything like that. Please feel free to send me a quick email and get in touch. I'm looking forward to getting to know you guys.
Yeah, I've also thrown my email in there as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you both very much. We've worked really closely with Propel and Western Entrepreneurship over the years. In fact, our centers kind of were born out of the same application for funding, and we partner on a number of things. So the things that Leap Junction does are pretty similar to the things that Western Entrepreneurship does, but obviously our advisors have different skill sets, and in entrepreneurship, it's always great to talk to multiple people because people are going to be able to advise you on various things. So I fully expect that each of you will reach out and get at least a second opinion on some of the things that we've told you. They got to keep us honest too, right? Nicole and Josh, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope that we can see you sometime in the future. But in the meantime, we'll see you on our Zoom calls.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelsey.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So that was Western. So like I said, they do really similar stuff to what we do for Western students. Obviously, you all are Fanshawe students, and some of you may have connections with Western as well. But like we operate, if you just had questions or just wanted to touch base with somebody at Western, no one's going to turn you away, even if you aren't a Western alumni. It's just going to be getting into like funding and some of the programs. That's where your Western affiliation is going to be required. So I hope that you'll reach out to Nicole and Josh if you have any questions. Jesse, I really hope that you will reach out because obviously they are food-based. That's where their expertise lies.
I've watched Nicole's webinar. She's like pretty much step by step. If I follow her, I'm going to be a millionaire. So.
Perfect. Excellent. I look forward to that for you.